Good evening, and finally, welcome to the open house for the zoning bylaw amendment application for 174 Main Street East. Before we begin, I would like to provide the land acknowledgement statement. Niagara Region and Grimsby are situated on treaty land. This land is steeped in the rich history of the First Nations, such as the Hattaway-Wendoronk, the Haudenosaunee, and the Anishinaabe, including the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. There are many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people from across Turtle Island that live and work in Niagara today. The regional municipality of Niagara and the town of Grimsby stands with all Indigenous people, past and present, in promoting the wise stewardship of the land on which we live. The purpose of tonight's open house is to provide the opportunity for the public to provide input on the proposed application. I would like to stress that there have been no decisions or recommendations made by council or planning staff on these applications. To ensure a fair process, members of council are to hear public input but not engage in debate about the merits of the application. Opinions on the application should not be made at this time. Members will have the opportunity to express all their views and concerns when the final staff report and recommendation comes forward. A subsequent public meeting will be held at a later date in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act, and public engagement will be welcome then as well. This meeting is conducted in accordance with the town's procedural bylaw. All participants are asked to conduct themselves with decorum and respect and provide the opportunity for all members of the public to express their opinion in an environment of tolerance on all points of view and free of intimidation. The intent is to create a venue to encourage people to participate in the process and provide their input. With us this evening is Diana Morris, T. Johns Consulting Group, and Kevin Antonides, Antec Consulting Group. Planning staff in attendance, Adam Gignac, planner. Tonight we will start with staff providing a brief presentation outlining the process and the application. Next, the consultant team will provide an overview of the proposal, and that will be followed by an opportunity for you to ask questions. If you have not already done so, please ensure you have signed in so you will be informed of future meetings on this proposal. As we navigate the virtual open house meeting, we ask all participants for your patience. Each participant will be called in order and will be provided 10 minutes to speak. Each presenter may speak only once. If you hear your comment presented by someone else, please do not duplicate the remarks. All the comments are being recorded and will be taken into consideration. When you are called, we ask that you state your name, address. Persons addressing council should confine their remarks to the business at hand and shall direct their comments or questions to the chair. Staff are taking notes of all the questions asked this evening. At the end of the delegations, the consultant will be asked to respond to all of the questions and comments raised. If you feel that your questions have not been responded to this evening, you can email our planning department at planning@grimsby.ca. Welcome, Adam. Go ahead with your presentation. Good evening.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. Peter, do you have my slides? Okay, perfect. Thank you. So good evening, everyone. Welcome to the open house this evening. I am Adam Gignac, and I'm a planner who works for the town. So the project that we're discussing tonight is a proposed zoning bylaw amendment for 174 Main Street East. So just to begin this open house, I'll be going through this brief presentation, providing you all with some of the insight into the process of this application, specifically the planning process, as well as to briefly identify and introduce the application itself, including what is planned for the site, although I will leave most of that for the applicants themselves. So following my presentation, we have Diana Morris from T. Johns Consulting Group and Kevin Antonides here to provide some greater details about the application. And after their presentation, there will be time to ask some questions or provide comments or concerns you may have about the application. So just to go over the purpose of the meeting tonight, we would like to provide you all with a brief overview of the planning process for a zoning bylaw amendment application. This includes the process from start to finish and where exactly the town is in this process. So an overview of the policy and the regulatory framework will be provided, including the relevant official plan policies that are in place. Ms. Morris will provide you with some of the additional details about the proposal. And finally, we can answer any questions you might have and gather some feedback. And all this feedback would be taken into consideration and identify any revisions that may need to be needed. So why can these plans change or bylaws? Under the Planning Act, authority is provided to submit applications for development plans that may not meet the current official plan or zoning bylaw. And in the case of this application, the zoning bylaw requirements cannot be met. So a zoning bylaw amendment is required. The town's role is to process these applications that come in. These applications are only able to amend the official plan or zoning bylaw if it is determined that the proposed changes comply with the overall intent of the official plan, and the result of these changes is a development that is compatible with the surrounding neighborhoods. Yeah, so what you see here is a flow chart that outlines some of the major milestones in the planning process. So an application for a zoning bylaw amendment starts with a pre-consultation meeting with town staff, relevant agencies, which can include, but is not limited to, the Niagara Escarpment Commission, the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority, the Region of Niagara, etc. So this particular meeting outlines the requirements a potential applicant would need to submit for an application. Once an application is ready to be submitted, the applicant would submit the required documents and fees to the town and to review for completion. And upon the application being deemed complete, a notice is sent out and agencies are asked for comments, and the public is also able to provide comments at this time. So for this application, any documents related to the proposal are posted on the current planning applications page of the town website. Notices for open houses and public meetings are also posted at this location. So we are currently at the open house stage, which offers a bit of an introduction of the application to all of you. So this open house will be followed by a public meeting at a later date, which will provide further opportunity for comments about the application. And along the way, revisions may be made to the application, and any concerns from agencies, town staff, or members of the public will be looked at. And after the public meeting, if all the concerns of the proposal are believed to have been met, staff will prepare a recommendation report for council regarding the application. And the decision on the application will be made at a future council meeting with the opportunity to appeal the decision afterwards. You'll go, Peter. Yeah, so the planning process is an open process, so it allows all of you to have a say. So this open house is just one of these opportunities to give your opinion on the application, and public meeting, again, is another opportunity. So you can also write a letter or an email addressed to the planning department to provide comments. The email is planning@grimsby.ca. You can also send a copy of your letter or email to your counselors as an alternative, and same thing, they'll make its way to us in planning. So to stay informed about the application, you're invited to provide your mailing address to the planning department. So by doing so, you'll receive notice of future meetings, information on how to obtain a staff report, information about speaking in front of the committee, and information on how a decision on the application can be appealed. So just moving on to the proposal now, this slide shows the proposed concept plan for the site. The application for the zoning bylaw amendment is to allow for the additional permitted use of the West Lincoln Memorial Hospital Foundation office to be on this site within the existing single detached dwelling. So no changes to the site itself are proposed, and the office space would be to accommodate 3 to 4 employees. So the official plan designates 174 Main Street East as low-density residential area. The policies for this designation are located in section 3.4.2 of the official plan. So this designation permits a mixture of residential uses, including single detached and semi-detached dwellings, as well as community facilities. It is considered a stable residential neighborhood, but does allow for limited development, evolution, and rejuvenation of the property. And the current zoning, just to touch on this briefly, is Main Street MS15 zone, which allows for a maximum 15% lot coverage currently. The MS15 zone is proposed to be maintained with some site-specific modifications. The modifications are to permit the West Lincoln Memorial Hospital Foundation office use to bring into conformity the existing buildings and structures on the site of the zone to the zoning bylaw and bring into conformity the driveway, aisle, parking spaces, and garage and other parking requirements with the zoning bylaw. And just to briefly note, the proposed office use would only apply to West Lincoln Memorial Hospital Foundation office. So any other proposed office space in the future would be subject to another planning application. So another zoning bylaw amendment if that use was to change to a different office use. And that would be it. Thank you.
All right, now we move to Deanna Morris. Deanna, welcome.
Good evening. Peter, I believe you'll be sharing my PowerPoint. Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Adam, for your staff presentation and for your assistance thus far on this file. Excuse me. Good evening, Mayor Jordan, Council, town staff, and the public. My name is Diana Morris, Senior Planner at T. Johns Consulting Group, agent on behalf of West Lincoln Memorial Hospital Foundation for the proposed zoning bylaw amendment application for the property located at 174 Main Street East. Next slide, please. The subject lands are located on the south side of Main Street East, east of Governor's Road, and west of Walker Court. The property has an approximate area of 0.22 hectares or 0.55 acres with 24.3 meters of frontage on Main Street East. The lands are rectangular in shape and currently occupy a single detached dwelling and a detached garage within the rear yard of the property. The existing use is presently vacant. The neighborhood is predominantly residential with various commercial and institutional uses along Main Street East. The existing West Lincoln Memorial Hospital is located directly north of the subject lands, located at 169 Main Street East. Next slide, please. The property is an existing residential lot with one vacant single detached dwelling and one detached garage owned by West Lincoln Memorial Hospital Foundation. Incorporated in 1981, the West Lincoln Memorial Hospital Foundation, a nonprofit organization, works with the community to help raise funds for the hospital and whose offices are currently located within the hospital. As you are aware, the hospital has submitted a site plan application to the town for the development of a 4-story building for additional 54 beds. Construction is anticipated to begin spring or summer of this year. Next slide, please. To accommodate the construction of the new building, the foundation bought the existing lot at 174 Main Street East with the intent of using it as an office space for the foundation's full-time employees. The proposed will use the existing dwelling for an office and maintain the existing parking provided on site, which includes 1 in the driveway and 2 in the detached garage. No changes to the dwelling or site are proposed. Next slide, please. The subject lands is designated low-density residential area. The proposed office use for the hospital foundation is considered a community facility, which is a permitted use within this designation. The redevelopment proposes the adaptive reuse of the existing 1.5-story single detached dwelling for the office use specifically for foundation staff. No site or building alterations are proposed, and therefore the existing built form will maintain compatibility with adjacent properties and respecting the character and streetscape of the existing neighborhood. Next slide, please. The town of Grimsby zones the land's Main Street MS.15 zone. An office is not permitted within this zone, and therefore a site-specific Main Street modified zone is proposed to allow the office use, specifically for foundation staff. The proposed use is restrictive in nature to ensure that the Main Street zone is maintained, and that once the foundation no longer requires the dwelling as an office, the residential use remains. Next slide, please. The town of Grimsby zoning bylaw requires 1 parking space per 28 square meters of gross floor area for an office use. Using the existing floor area of the existing dwelling, 8 parking spaces would be required for the office. However, this does not represent the demand of those who will be using the office, and the proposed is restrictive that using the standard parking rate is not feasible, as there will be approximately 3.5 full-time employees that will be using the dwelling as an office. Since the built form is not changing, the existing 3 parking spaces on the site are sufficient for the proposed use and number of employees. Next slide, please. I'd like to thank you all for listening to my presentation, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have when the opportunity arises. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation, Diana. Up next, we will have Bruce Bond as the first delegate. Bruce, welcome.
Mr. Chair.
Thanks for having me. Oops. Hi, Kevin.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. My name is Bruce Bond. I live at 6 Linwood Avenue, which is just around the corner from the property in question and the hospital. I have been a member of the Grimsby Kinsmen for 47 years, and for many of those years involved in fundraising for the hospital over these years. In 2001, the Grimsby Kinsmen were the first service club to come forward and support the new hospital Investing in Life campaign. It also advocated for other clubs to do the same. The Kinsmen Club was also leaders for the Project X-ray campaign, and they have continued raising funds for radiology equipment. These funds were raised through our annual mini putt, of which I was the project chairman. Both myself and my wife have donated many hours to volunteering for the foundation, such as the golf tournament and preparation of the direct mailing campaigns. Construction will begin in the new hospital soon, and the current foundation office will be impacted by this construction. And I feel it makes great sense for the foundation to move their office to the property directly across from the road from the hospital. In my opinion, this investment will increase over the years, becoming a great asset, building equity for our community. The easy access for donors to this new building is a benefit. Rather than trying to find parking in a busy hospital undergoing construction and then trying to find offices located within the new hospital, this house is much preferred. I cannot stress the importance of alleviating donors from having to enter a healthcare facility during pandemic times, which we have been going through for the last 2 years. And we know what that fundraising doesn't stop during pandemics. Donors will have easy access to this new facility with a circular driveway with an easy drive in and drive out onto Main Street. The Main Street location is in an area that already has a mix of residential, commercial, and mixed use and converted dwellings. This adaptive reuse of the house will blend in well with the neighborhood and will be a non-obtrusive use for its location. Directly across from the hospital, it is an excellent repurposing of residential dwelling for an office of this purpose. We have waited so long and we have fought so hard to get a new hospital. I see this foundation office as enhancing the opportunity to fulfill our dreams and wholeheartedly support this application.
Thank you, Bruce. Up next, we have resident Ashley Dell. Welcome, Ashley. Ashley, if you're trying to speak, your looks like your mic is muted. Well, we'll move to the next resident, Kevin Elzinga. Welcome, Kevin.
Yeah, hello, well, thank you. Yeah, so we just have one question here, being that we actually—
Kevin, can you just state your address, please, just for our records?
Yeah, so we are at 48 Hedgelawn Drive.
Okay.
So just one question here. So when it's, I guess it's going to be rezoned temporarily as commercial. Is that what I'm getting? That's what I'm understanding?
Diana, we could probably answer that
I
right
can
now.
answer that now. Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Kevin, for your question. Through you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, it will be temporary use for an office until the foundation no longer requires that the subject lands for an office. So yes, temporary.
Okay. And then once that process is finished, will it go back to being residential?
To you, Mr. Chairman, yes, it will. Basically, the way we set up our site-specific bylaw is that it will still maintain the same zone, just a site-specific right now to allow the office use. Once it's no longer needed, then it will just go back to the current use, which is the MS 0.15. And because we added a site specific that is specifically in office use for the West Lincoln Memorial Hospital Foundation, another individual can't come in and just use the space for an office. They would have to go through the same process that we are going through right now.
Okay, so could it be resold again back as a home, as a house?
To you, Mr. Chairman, yes, it may. Yes, it can.
Okay, that was my question. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
All right, seeing no further delegations, I'll open up to members of council. Questions or comments from members of council? Councillor Sharp. Councillor Sharp, you're muted.
No, thanks for letting me know. I was halfway in through my speech. But I have reviewed the application and I have spoken to some of the board members at the West Lincoln Memorial Hospital Foundation. So the question I have is with regard to on the east side of the property, it's fairly deep property and there's a ditch there or like a creek, some kind of a water course. I wonder when they do, well, they're not doing any work to the site, are they? And there's a fence on that ditch. Can we maybe naturalize that green space in coordination with any works that are going on that site?
Adam, I think that might be a question for you.
Yep, through you, Chair. So yeah, it's the easternmost portion of the property there, just to the east of the the garage there. It appears there is a separate parcel there that is owned by the town of Grimsby at that location. The property itself for 174 doesn't go all the way up to the properties along Walker Court there. So I believe a portion of that is town of Grimsby property.
Yeah, so I don't know. I'm on the Green Committee, and I don't know if it will apply because they may not be doing any actual construction on the site. But if there is any work done on the site, I'd like to have some comment and get some input from the Green Committee with regard to that creek, and like I said, naturalization. That's my only comments. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Councillor Sharp. Your comments will be noted. Councillor Bothwell.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. I have a couple of questions. So it was interesting to hear that this is a temporary zoning bylaw for a temporary use, that once it's no longer required that the property could be resold, just in the sense that there's a large vacant lot to the west of it as well. And I was curious whether this was an investment, but that's, you know, in order for those potential for those properties to be merged down the road. There's nothing in the zoning bylaw that indicates it's a temporary use until the foundation no longer needs it. So maybe Adam can clarify when I finish my questions whether or not there has to be, there's a timeline there because zoning bylaw amendments can't be reapplied for, I think it's 2 years or something. So just a question about the timing on that. And then I have a concern, and I totally support the foundation's work in the community. I totally support, this initiative, knowing that they're being displaced and they have to find a good home. But we've made other offices, other Main Street homes that have been redeveloped or reused for office uses just across the street and further down comply with parking requirements when they modified their uses to different types of office uses. And I'm a little concerned that it is going to serve the public. Donors are going to be coming there to speak to the people who are working at the foundation. Currently, the parking is only providing for staff and not for visitors or donors attending the premises. So I'm concerned that I think we need to have a minimum of one space at least for donors or patrons to attend the foundation office, as in any other office building use, and that it needs to be fully accessible anytime you're redeveloping, and especially when you're using it for a hospital or a foundation clinic use sort of like thing. I think we need to ensure that it's there's an accessible parking space for people, for the donors that are visiting the foundation office. And I didn't see anything in any of the planning justification reports or requirements, and I believe that we do require that accessible parking space, and I'd like clarification on that. Those were my main concerns, and just again, how long is this temporary use proposed? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bothwell. Councillor Cadwell.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for the presentation and the delegations too. I think this is a great initiative, a great move by the foundation, especially as what Bruce mentioned about for the fundraising. You know, it just wouldn't be right to have people having to find a parking spot, you know, in the hospital, at the hospital, and with the construction and everything going on. So I really like the initiative here. I think it's a great idea. I think it's a great investment for the foundation. I just want to Councillor Bothwell's question, and it is a good question about the parking, but I'm just thinking, is it because it's a temporary zoning? Does that mean that the maybe, and I agree with having some accessible parking, but yeah, I'd look for clarification on that too. But overall, I think it's fantastic. I'm just thinking when Councillor Sharp was talking about the little ditchway, and I thought, okay, but there's also a pathway on the east side of Walker's Court, right along Sherwood Park there for people to go back and forth. So I understand the water course of the ditch there. So yeah, just comments. Great, excited about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cadwell. Kevin Ananides, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was registered as a delegate, so I'm kind of backtracking a bit, maybe giving a bit of the reason or the rationale for the purchase and the move, although I think it sounds like a little bit of it was covered already. So I'm Kevin Antonitis. I'm representing the West Lincoln Memorial Hospital Foundation Board. I'm currently the chair. We're located currently across the road, as was mentioned, in the Globe building, which is the little white building off to the left if you're facing the hospital. From Main Street, we're in that little white building off to the left. Just a bit of a background. So back in the fall, one of the proponents had indicated that they may require demolition. If they were the successful proponent, they may require demolition of the Globe building immediately, which would be in the next couple months. As you know, we're very close to the groundbreaking. The current successful proponent, Ellis Don, may or may not require that right away. But in any event, the foundation felt it prudent that we would have to look for space back in the fall right away, either to rent temporarily and go back into the hospital or find a permanent home for us. With space being at a premium in the new hospital because of the tight footprint, of course, we were being told, basically informed, that they wouldn't be able to accommodate us on the main floor. And of course, the foundation wants to have a front and center location for its patrons and donors and so on, and felt that being pushed into the administrative space wouldn't be ideal for our patrons and visitors, especially elderly folks that like to come in, make a donation, et cetera. As Bruce Bond had mentioned, they've got to go into a hospital, which was impossible in the last 2 years, of course. And if we weren't on the main floor, out the front separate entrance, it wouldn't be ideal. So the board felt it important that we'd find alternate location. And of course, it also frees up valuable clinical space in the hospital if we don't relocate there. So we'd have to not only build out or pay for the space that we'd occupy in the hospital as part of the local share, and would be basically belonging to HHS. So we felt it prudent to relocate elsewhere. So in the meantime, the last, I guess a month after that, an opportunity came available to us with this property immediately across the road from the hospital, which was ideal in many senses. It maintains our Main Street presence, great exposure, and with the conversion of the house to this office-like setting, it's ideal for our visitors, our patrons. It's a comfortable, safe environment for them to visit. Parking is great. As mentioned, there's around the circular driveway. There's lots of room. And to your point, Councillor Bothwell and others that have raised it, even though there's legally 3 spots, when you count them, there's effectively a lot more parking on that site. In terms of visitors attending, I would say we get no more than 5 a week. The only other quote unquote heavy traffic would be when we have a board meeting. We might have 10 people attend, and that might only be every couple of months or so for a couple of hours. So there's certainly lots of room on this property. As you can attest, it's a very deep and wide property, so space is not a problem. There is the plan to accommodate the barrier-free ramp and parking if required. That wouldn't be an issue. There's lots of room on the site, so that could be easily accommodated. So yeah, back to the location, it's ideal for us. The Main Street presence is fantastic. And it becomes, as mentioned, it's an investment for the foundation rather than a cost to occupy space in the hospital, which wouldn't be ideal. So in summary, I guess we'd like to say that the points raised were excellent, and we look forward to our new home. And yeah, we're excited for this opportunity.
All right, thank you very much, Kevin. And so any of the questions that can be answered now, I'll open it up to Adam and Diana.
Yeah, so thank you, Mayor Jordan. Through you, I can address a little bit more of the parking. So as Kevin iterated, I can share my screen. I have the concept plan here. Yeah, so as you see here, there is the circular roundabout located on the site. This is as existing. So this circular roundabout is able to accommodate an additional 2 parking spaces in this location. As for an accessible parking space, the minimum width requirement would be 4.5 meters. So this location right here would be about 5 centimeters too short, unfortunately. But there is additional parking spaces as opposed to 3. Is my understanding the 3 just referred to the 3 that were required by employees. But there is additional parking space available.
Okay.
Thank you, Adam. Through you, Mr. Chair. Apologies for the confusion. I just want to address the comments regarding a temporary use. My apologies if I said it was temporary. My focus was to say that should the use be temporary, then the existing provisions of the bylaw applies, so it can revert back to a single detached dwelling. But we did not state any timing on the zoning bylaw because the office use most likely will be a permanent use for on the subject lands. Apologies again for the confusion.
Thank you. So I think that's all the questions that were were asked. So thank you for your participation in the open house. The consultants and staff will take back your feedback. Please contact staff at planning@grimsby.ca if you have any additional comments or questions about the proposal after this evening. So the open house is now closed. Everyone have a good evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.